Good Saturday, poetry lovers. We just spent some time with our Great War poems earlier this month, and then poems last week from the Roaring Twenties. Today we are going to think about the Great Plains and maybe one or two other places where some of us came from and which produced some pretty good poetry. We're going to start with an old favorite, poet Ruth Moss, who lives in Topeka, Kansas. And the poem I'm choosing comes from her book Valentine, which I think is still on the market. And if not, you can probably look her up online. I don't know if she's on Facebook or whatever, but she'll probably let me know. But I'm sure this book is available. And what we're going to do is read a poem entitled Dove Season. Dove Season. Little gray dove, how did you decode the foreigner's thrumming? I am so lonely to accept its invitation. It was just a white plastic bag snared in a maple tree, the ubiquitous flag of a nation surrendering to trash. But you perched at its side for hours, a splendorous lady taking tea with the chateau's pale host, while pretending to admire the tapestries. When you finally collected your veins and your feathers, your coos and your flutters, you flew south, and it was over. The puff of your soft exit, the extinguishment of a candle after the party expires. But the white bag calls out, "Come back," with its cannon shot whipping and snapping, its ugly song of longing, immune to uncertain seasons and their fickle little gray memories. Oh, that's typical Ruth. Typical Ruth Moss. And I would have to say that the apposition of two things, the dove and the plastic bag, give this poem its rather sad outline. The use of various items to attract birds, of course, is common. I am not sure about the use of plastic bags. But other means include such things as folded pillowcases with knots in the top, used by some hunters of the snow goose. In fact, an alternative title for this poem might indeed be Decoy. Next on our list for today, I'm going to introduce a new poet. Her name is Elizabeth Schultz, and she's a retired English professor at Kansas University in Lawrence, Kansas. And this is her book, The Quickening. It's got a bright cover, so it's going to reflect, but that white spot in the middle of the cover is actually the moon, and that's supposed to be there. Okay, The Quickening. Now, it probably would help you to know that Elizabeth Schultz spent 6 years in Japan, 6 years of her life. Now, I don't know what she was doing there. My guess is she was probably teaching English or maybe learning Japanese. I'll tell you one thing. I don't think I could learn Japanese in 6 years. But whatever her reason, she didn't stop writing poetry while she was there. And this poem is called The Hank You Line. And it is a description of a train ride to Hank You Station. Young lovers muse on each other's palms. Sloppy businessmen sprawl across seats. Nodding students, attentive mothers, weary matrons in Paris fashions. For less than an hour, we share a common destiny. Fast forward on his commuter train. We run together, then dissolve, existing elsewhere on separate terms. Only the woman, brushing her teeth over an orange basin, is framed forever in a train window as I looked squarely into her room at the Nakatsu stop. Well, that's a very interesting poem. It's concise, brief, but it has a lot in it, doesn't it? I think you can get the picture of crowding, not only on the train, but the woman brushing her teeth. The image at the end, where her window on the train comes smack dab across from either a hotel or a house window where a woman is brushing her teeth. And I think you can get a metaphor there for people all crowded together, which is kind of the way the Japanese live. Okay, let's move on to another poem. This poet was selected by Billy Collins for his collection of poetry by others called Poetry 180. And I was very impressed by this poem, if I can just find it here. Shoshanna Shy is the name of the poet. I had a bookmark in here, but it got lost. But all good host drivel must come to an end sometime. And I did find the poem. It's on page 17. And it's by Shoshanna Shy, who lives in Wisconsin, where she is involved with poetry and works for a poetry association. Shoshanna Shy. The title of this poem, and you need to really pay attention to this: Bringing My Son to the Police Station to be Fingerprinted. Okay, here's the poem. My lemon-colored whisper weight blouse with keyhole closure and sweetheart neckline is tucked into a pastel silhouette skirt with side-slit vents and triplicate pleats. When I realize in the sunlight through the windshield that the cool yellow of this blouse clashes with the buttermilk heather in my skirt, which makes me slightly queasy. However, the periwinkle in the pattern on the sash is sufficiently echoed by the twill uppers of my buckle-snug sandals, while the accents on my purse pick up the pink in the button stitches. And then we pass through weapons check. It's reassuring to note how the yellows momentarily mesh and make an overall pleasing composite. Shoshanna Shy, bringing my son to the police station. Well, what are we to make of this? Your first response may be, well, she's talking about her clothes. Yes. But I think we can see that she's really venting her anxiety. The anxiety in her has to be released by completely changing the subject. We are never told why her son is with her there, except in the title. We know nothing about what might have happened, but she has really encouraged us to think deeply about what it really might be in the title, which is very detailed, isn't it? Finally, I'm going to read a poem by an old friend and really a mentor of mine, Eric McHenry, who's written a little book of poetry called Odd Evening. And this is another book that I've allowed the bookmark to pass out of my view, but here's the poem. Now, this is a very simple, short poem, but there's a lot in it. In fact, a few years ago it won the Theodore Roethke Prize for Poetry, which is not a small award among poets, although the rest of us really haven't heard much about it. But this poem is called Stay. And then the epigram at the beginning is in parentheses, and it's just a single word, frost. Fall's first gold is green. It falls somewhere between a joy and a concern. But soon the leaves will turn flamboyant, and with their doubt, like people falling out of love, become all the lovelier as they fall. That is a lovely image, isn't it, of leaves, flamboyant leaves. We can see the flames and the colors in the leaves just from that word flamboyant. A wonderful choice. Like people falling out of love, becoming all the lovelier as they fall. There's a lot there. You could almost write another poem about that phrase. So that's Eric McHenry's Stay. Finally, we're going to have a bit of humor. We're going to read a poem by Crowe Ransom. It's from a book I've had for a long time. And as I've mentioned many times, Crowe Ransom is not a relative of mine, but he was one of the best poets of the first half of the 20th century. This poem is called Survey of Literature. And the book from which this poem is taken is Selected Poems by Crowe Ransom. I bought it for $3.95. Don't ever throw any books away, folks. It's not economical, especially if you try to buy them back. Okay, Survey of Literature. In all the good Greek of Plato, I lack my roast beef and potato. A better man was Aristotle, pulling steady on the bottle. I dip my hat to Chaucer, swilling soup from his saucer, and to Master Shakespeare, who wrote big on small beer. The abstemious Wordsworth subsisted on a curd's worth. But a slick one was Tennyson, putting gravy on his venison. What these men had to eat and drink is what we say and what we think. The influence of Milton came rye out of Stilton. Sing a song for Percy Shelley, drowned in pale lemon jelly. And for precious John Keats, dripping blood of pickled beets. Then there was poor Willie Blake. He foundered on too sweet cake. God have mercy on the sinner who must write with no dinner, no gravy and no grub, no pewter and no pub, no belly and no bowels, only consonants and vowels. I love that. Even though this book is coming apart and I have to hold it together with a rubber band, still, for $3.95, I think I'm going to keep it. Now, that's it for today. My goal for next week is to read some poems that have had historical impact in America and elsewhere. What will those be? Rack your brains. That's what I'm doing. And let me know. Send me a text to Jim Ransom 506 at gmail.com. Jim Ransom 506 at gmail.com. If you want to propose a poem that has changed the world, I'd love to know what it is. I may miss it if you don't let me know. Okay, with that, I will let you go and hope that you have a wonderful week to come. Bye now.